It's Central Valley Business. I'm your host, Steve Walling. My guest for this segment is Hans Berger. Hans, you are an author of an incredible book. It's called A Bridge to Cross, and it's a true story of a family's dealing with the Nazis.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Okay, my mom and dad, they met in Bielefeld, Germany. They went to a Lutheran, what would you say, a mission, okay, where they took care of disadvantaged people and the people who had somehow a tough time, okay. My dad was going to be a Lutheran pastor. Okay. My mother was going to be a nurse, a Lutheran nurse. Mm-hmm. However, because of her impairment, hearing impairment, she had to drop out. They wouldn't let her continue her studies. So they both moved to Heidelberg, Germany. Ever heard of Heidelberg, Germany?
I sure have, yeah.
Beautiful place. We lived there. I was born there. My three sisters.
What year were you born?
42.
So you were born kind of right in the thick of it.
Right in the thick of things. Yeah. And I have three sisters. At that time, I was 2 years old. My other sister was 4, and the other one 7 and 9. So 4 of us kids. My mother was a tough lady. This is the picture of my mother.
Now, let's see if we can get this picture, Michael. I don't know if you can. I'll try and get it without getting a glare. There you go. Okay. Good deal.
And my mother spoke out against Hitler. That was her...
That was a big mistake.
Yeah, a big mistake. Yeah. But it was on her heart. She said what she saw things not going right, okay?
Right.
And the women always met in the afternoon for Kaffeeklatsch. You know what that is, coffee and cake and that kind of thing. Well, I had a spy in the midst of them. She did not know.
Oh, okay.
And her husband was a Gestapo officer.
Well, that's got to be, yeah.
Didn't know. Nobody knew. And she leaked all the information to her husband. So this has been on for a couple of years, and they interrogated my mother a couple of times, and slapped her around, and that kind of things were going downhill fast, okay? Right. And one night, a friend of my mother came to our place and said, Mrs. Berger, you got 1 hour or less. They're on their way right now to arrest you. That would mean, you know.
Yeah. It'd be...
They shot you, it's on concentration camp with us kids. So my dad worked at the hospital. He took care of injured soldiers, German, British, French, whatever, okay? Right. So they didn't bother him any. So he packed us up, took us to a train station. My dad was partially bombed out. It was still operational. We got on a troop train to the Russian front with a bunch of German soldiers. But we stopped off in Berlin where her dad was. And finding out her dad was a Nazi. She did not know. She didn't like the guy. But because of convenience, you know, the situation, as let's stay here, we'll be safe, and we don't have to worry about the Nazis. Well, he was one himself. Then they got into this verbal dispute and kind of thing, and I think it was even altercation physically. He threatened to turn her over to the Gestapo. So we were uncomfortable staying there. Right. So my mother packed us up with our little cart, and she pulled us to the East Prussian border, which was a couple of hundred kilometers east, where my mother grew up. In October 44, the Russians came across the border in mass. Right. It was horrible. Wave after wave, a couple of 100,000 or more troops came across. Most of them were drunk. It was mayhem, okay? Destruction, fire, shooting, you name it, it all happened, okay? So we were in that situation for a year and a half, almost a year and a half. We couldn't get away. We couldn't get out there. We were ringed. There was a iron ring of Russian soldiers around us. There's no place we could go. Right. My mother was stressed out, like most
and this is
civilians.
What your book is about.
Yes.
It tells that story. Was your father ever able to rejoin you?
Yeah. The thing is, through a number of miracles, many miracles. If you like miracles, this book.
Miracles.
Cool. You figured we'd never come out of there. And there were angels in the Russian uniform. That's all I can tell you. Yeah. There were Russians. They were going to kill us, shoot us. There were Russians. They were helping us. Right. My mother said, without the Russians, we would have never made it. Because she traded vodka and cigarettes for stale food, what the soldiers had on them, okay? And my dad didn't hear from us for a year and a half. He figured he'd never see us again. We were on 3 Soviet trucks to the gulags, east to the slave labor camps.
Oh, my.
And God made a way for us to get off all 3 of them. things just happened. One miracle after another, how we got off of there.
Amazing. So, Hans, how'd you end up in the States?
That's another good question.
Is that in the book too?
Yes.
It is.
In 57, actually it started in 56, my dad was a pathologist, and he studied, did research on Alzheimer's disease and that kind of thing.
Okay.
It gets really complicated,
Right.
okay? And Dr. Berger, who was a German doctor, a Jewish doctor, who left Germany before Hitler came into power, he read about his research and things. So he got in touch with my dad and says, we want you over here, University of Medical Center in Denver.
Cool.
So he sponsored us, everything, because in those days, and even today, I think you have to have a sponsor, you have to have a profession.
Yeah, it's a process.
So you're not a burden to the government, okay? And he would step in case something would happen.
Right.
None of us spoke English. My dad didn't speak English. My mom didn't speak English. I went to high school not speaking a word of English. Now, do you talk about a tough time?
Yeah, that's got to be
It's
tough.
about drove me nuts.
So, where do we get this book?
This book can be through Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's on a lot of social media sites.
Okay, it's called A Bridge to Cross.
Any bookstore you can get it
You
through.
can get it. Okay.
And
And do you have a web page yourself?
yes,
or-
I do. Just put in Hans Berger, Bridge to Cross, whatever, it'll come up.
It'll come up.
And I have a web page, and also it gives you the my schedules in the future, the events I'm going to
Now,
attend.
you got an event coming up today, don't
Yes,
you?
I do. It's Betty Rodriguez Library on Cedar and Shields. Love to have you there from 3 to
Here
4
in
o'clock.
Fresno, 3 to 4 o'clock today. This is October 22nd.
Right.
So be there at 3 o'clock. That'd be great. You've had good sales on the book so far.
Yes.
And you
very
got some
good.
possibly good things coming up, right?
Yes, sir. Things
All
are
right.
looking great. Thank
Hans,
you, Steve. It's
thank
a pleasure.
you for being on the show.
You bet.
It's a great story, man. Story that a lot of people need to hear. We'll see you when we come back.